I first decided I was going to stand up and tell my testimony, I thought, well, I better get real clear about what really happened, because because I'm 51, and it was 37 years ago. I was 16 years old, and I found myself pregnant. And what I did was, when I started looking back, I decided, well, fortunately, I was one of those young girls who wrote a diary. And so I actually chronicled everything that I was going through, everything I thought, everything I felt, what actually happened, what I was feeling at that time. And so I went back and read it all. I went back a year before, I went to a year after, just to kind of get an idea where I was coming from, how could I possibly have ended up in this position, and how did this happen to me? So I went back and I looked, and when I found out I was pregnant at 16, and I had just one boyfriend, and we were in love and all that, and of course at that time, this is in the 70s, so that wasn't unusual, it was after the 60s, so what I was experiencing was becoming pretty commonplace, and so here I was with my boyfriend, and I kind of given into the pressure around me to, go ahead and get involved with this guy, and then found out, oh, sure enough, I was pregnant, and what I had written in my diary is I said to myself, well, I've got three options. I can run away, because I knew my parents were not going to be glad about this, and they were probably going to be very angry. So I said I can either run away or I can stay, meaning that if they did accept the fact that I was pregnant, that I would stay at home and have a baby there, which is really what I wanted to do. Or I would get married to this guy, which my parents didn't like him. So I didn't think that was probably going to happen because I was too young. And so I eventually knew I was pregnant because I was being morning sick, and I kind of suspected. So I went down to the local, they called it the Open Door Clinic, which is basically a Planned Parenthood. This was back in when the Open Door Clinics were just getting started, because abortion had been legal about a year. Well, not quite a year when I found out I was pregnant. And so I went into the clinic just to find out, for the free pregnancy test. That's why I went there. And so I went in, and sure enough, I was pregnant. And what they did was, my boyfriend had gone with me that day. I skipped school, gone down there, and they had taken him into one room, and they put me in another, and they talked to us separately. And when they were done speaking to us about where we were at in life, and I don't even remember what they asked me, but when they came back, the one girl her name was Karen. She said, well, we've talked to your boyfriend, and we've thought about it, we've discussed it, and we've decided that the best thing for you is an abortion. And at that time, that wasn't something I was considering. It wasn't something that was even in my vocabulary. And I didn't really understand, what that was all going to entail, but they said, they would take care of it. So they made the appointment for me, and I had to go home then and tell my mother. Well, I wasn't pleased about that, because I really did want my child, which I think isn't really that unusual. I think that most women do want their children. Anyway, what happened was I went home to tell my mother, and my mother, both my mother and father are not Christians, and I wasn't at the time either. But anyway, I told my mother that I had talked to my boy. I told her, yes, Mom, I'm pregnant, and I've talked to my boyfriend, and he said that he'd marry me, and we could have a child. And she looked at me, and she was a very, you could say, a feminist, and she had her own career and so forth, and I'm the youngest, so she had just about raised all her children. She had three children total, and she said, absolutely not. You are not going to marry this kid, and you're not going to have this baby. And so, well, I just figured, well, so I don't have a lot of choice. And so my mother took me on that day that it was scheduled, my mother took me to the abortion clinic, and my boyfriend went with me, and she made sure that I went in and did this. But anyway, even before the abortion started, of course I was extremely afraid, and I really didn't want to go through with it, but I didn't really feel like I had an option. There was really nobody there for me on the other side. There was nobody saying, hey, don't do this, I'll help you. There was nothing like that. And so, even during the early part of the process, I told them to stop. Once they actually started the process, dilating me, I said, I screamed, stop, stop. And I think that happens a lot. Matter of fact, I was watching a video today of Norma McCorvey, who's they used to get abortion. She's Roe versus Wade. She's the Roe part of it. And she said that when she worked in abortion clinics, that happened a lot, which I didn't know. That was news to me. That women, mostly, when they start this process, they're screaming, stop. Anyway, they don't stop. They never stop. If you go in that clinic, you're right. You don't have any stop. They just put me out. And when I woke up, it was over. Well, there was nothing I could do about it at that point. And of course, being as young as I was, I didn't really understand and at that time there was no ultrasound, and there was no videotape or any kind of pictures of a child developing in the womb. And at that time, they told me, and my mother too, told me it was a blob of tissue. It was no big deal. There will be no consequences. You'll be fine. Just a blob of tissue. Just get rid of it. Life goes on. And of course, I didn't think that my mother would ever do anything to harm me. I trusted her. And I believe she thought that she was doing the right thing. I think she still thinks that. But anyway, so after that, years went by. And, years and years. And then I finally, got married. And anyway, by then, I realized there was, I'd had some problems with my reproductive system. And then when I was 26, I had developed an infection in my reproductive system that would never go away. It's called pelvic inflammatory disease, and it is something that happens to women that had abortions. Well, anyway, it would not go away. They had to physically remove it, and in the process, I lost one of my ovaries and both of my tubes. So now I'm thinking, oh, okay, now I don't even have an option. There's not going to be any children in my life. So, it not only did it take the one that I did have, but it took all the future ones that I may have had, that I could never naturally conceive ever again. And this is not really all that unusual. There is a lot of women that have that same testimony, that they haven't been able to have children after abortion. So, of course, this particular part of what's going on in the world is very, I would say, it's a very big deal to me. It's not, because a lot of women do go on to have children, and maybe, they do regret it, and it is a problem, and they need healing. But for me, that was it. It was that just put an end to my future, and I didn't have children or grandchildren or anything like that. And so, to me, it's huge. It's probably the most central issue in my life because of it. So, when I see people standing out there, I'm just thrilled. I'm like, oh, thank God somebody cares. Because when I was a kid, they really hadn't really realized what was going on, that this was damaging women. They didn't know that. They didn't even know it was a baby, And so, I'm just really thrilled that it's happening. And the people down there, I started getting involved. And I realized that, see, now, when you've had an abortion, and I don't care if they say it's the best thing they ever did, because it's not. I mean, underneath all that denial is a lot of pain. I know it. And I don't care, because a lot of times they are in denial because they don't want to go there. They don't want to feel the pain of what they've done and what the consequences of it. I mean, there's a lot of consequences emotionally, physically, psychologically, and they've proven it now. There's even a correlation, they say now, between breast cancer and abortion. And so it doesn't surprise me that all the breast cancer that's in the country right now, because there's been a lot of women without abortions. And so, anyway, I got involved, and I realized that, as far as healing after the abortion, it's an ongoing process. You never really get over it, because there's that loss, the child that you didn't have, the child that you wanted to know, the child that you think about all the time, that, what would they look like now? What would it have been like if I had that child? What would my life been like? Because after a woman has an abortion, there's something in them dies. And a lot of them end up, and I was one of them, you end up not really caring what happens to you after that, because you've damaged goods. I mean, that's like the worst thing that could happen to you, so what more could happen that would really matter? And that's really kind of how it goes. I had already taken a Bible study And, you know, I thought, well, you know,